أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا طيبا مباركا فيه كما ينبغي لله وجه العظيم سلطانك ما تحب وترضى والسلام على رسولنا محمد آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and various sisters, Jazakumullah khair for rejoining Maghrib. May Allah accept the Salah and Ibadah, and we shall inshallah continue with our Usra until Isha. However, my technical officer says to me that we had some difficulty in the start. Some people missing of the talk, perhaps 5 minutes or so. Just those who just joined us on the internet, the families, the link is directly under the picture. If you're watching at the moment, if you link and you can download the PDF file and see what we're talking about, inshallah ta'ala. So those who are here, we have some copies of this that you must have it in your hands to me. We have been going through the 54 faraid as per the listing of Hasani rahimahullah ta'ala, and we are on the 7th fard, which is consuming only halal food and drink from halal sources. And he also said that all sciences or non-Islamic sciences, they all have the technical terms. It is impossible to explain a concept properly. If it is not enough, we should inshallah get more printouts. We have done it. Inshallah, Brother Hakan, we should get some point the sister inshallah ta'ala. Everything a Muslim, intelligent, non-insane, adult Muslim, everything that he does, as soon as he reaches the age of puberty, as soon as he is sound of mind, that is mentally disabled person is not regarded, and a Muslim person, 3 conditions, you are automatically become a mukallaf. And everything that you do in your life from onwards, the moment that you reach puberty until you die, falls into one of the 8 categories. You must know, every shaykh, every talk, every Islamic lecture, every book uses these terms. So it is for your own good, for your own benefit, that you must memorize these terms and you must learn these terms. Put it in your fridge, put it on your desk, put it all over the walls of your house, and read it a couple of days. Inshallah, next month, you'll memorize the whole lot. But you must. So inshallah, briefly I'm going to go through this first as of our trade, so to speak. Then can continue, inshallah ta'ala, with our slides, with our normal topic. So everything a mukallaf person does, an adult Muslim does, intelligent Muslim does, falls into one of those 8 categories of actions. There are certain actions which are called fard. Some of them are called wajib, some of them are called sunnah, some of them are called mustahab, some of them are called haram, some of them are called makruh, some of them are called mubah, and some of them are called mufsid. Some of you are quite familiar with some of these terms, especially haram. Everybody knows what haram is. Everybody knows what a fard is. But do you really know, is the question. What is fard? Fard means an obligation which is absolutely compulsory for you to do so. The evidence of this command, obligation, is so clear, so clearly spelled out in the Quran and the Sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no doubt whatsoever. Something that you must do, you don't have an option. And this is further divided into 2 subcategories. One is fardu ayn and the other one is called fardu kifaya. Fardu ayn means you individually responsible for this. It's compulsory for you to do so. You cannot get away with this. You cannot pass this responsibility on to anybody else. Some examples: 5 daily salat. You can't hire somebody to do your salat. Fasting during the month of Ramadan. You can't hire somebody else to fast your fasting. You can't hire somebody else to give you zakat. Or Hajj. You know the pillars of Islam that we're talking about. That is individually compulsory upon every Muslim, but certain of these are dependent on your circumstances. But Salat is, for example, praying 5 times a day is compulsory upon every Muslim. Until you die, you are never exempt from Salat. Fardu Kifaya is type of obligation, which is we call communal obligation. In other words, it's fardu upon everybody, that everybody must do it. But not that way. If a group within that everybody, within the whole collection of Muslims, a group of Muslims carries out this particular obligation, then the responsibility from the shoulders of the rest of the community is removed. For example, we always say, for example, you're swimming near a lake or river. Some of you, or one of you, felt so courageous and jumped into the water without knowing how to swim. Then what happens? If that person drowns and dies, all the Muslims on the shore at the banks will be responsible. Will be charged with murder on the Day of Judgment. But if one of them jumped into the water and saved that person, then that responsibility of saving that Muslim from dying is fulfilled, and therefore the responsibility of saving that person is lifted from the whole community, that group. Another example is Salatul Janazah. If a Muslim dies, the whole community is responsible. If nobody did it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will individually call each and every Muslim on the Day of Judgment and ask questions about this case. Why did you not fulfill the obligations of funeral rites to this particular Muslim? And you carried the janazah according to Islamic rites and buried him in a Muslim cemetery. If you do not do this, the whole Muslim community will be held responsible. If 1 or 2 Muslims got together and they fulfill the rights of obligations towards this particular janazah, dead person, deceased person, then the whole community is freed from this responsibility. So the fard, obligation of 2 types. One is called fardu ayn, and the other one is called fardu kifaya. Correct? Not a problem. Anybody who rejects a fard is a non-believer, not Muslim. If, for example, it says, I don't believe in zakat, giving charity, the compulsory 2.5%, that person becomes a kafir. Even if he practices every other thing in Islam, except he believes that zakat is not fard, this person is a kafir, disbeliever, because he rejects a fard. We cannot reject any fard. Correct? If a person says, I don't have to pray, but prayer is not a fard for me, then this person becomes a kafir. Very dangerous. You never play games with any of the fara'id. Fara'id is the plural of the word fard. Now, the wajib, this is a Hanafi definition, technically a little bit less than fard in theory, but in practice equally important. In practice, equally important. Wajib means necessary. For example, praying Salatul Witr for Ahnaf, the Hanafis, is wajib. If you don't pray witr, if you miss witr, you must make qada of this witr, according to the Hanafis. Very important. Not Shafis. Shafis is sunnat muakkada, something that you have to do. But it is not wajib. And the Shafi's definition of wajib is different than the Hanafis. Just bear in mind. Sunnah. Everybody knows it. Sunnah is a sunnah, it's only sunnah, not important. That's rubbish. Sunnah is absolutely important. Sunnah is the actual tradition of our Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It consists of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what he did, and what he advised or tacitly approved of in his lifetime. What he did, what he said, what did he say? His spoken words. He commanded people. And he saw a situation and he approved. Say, did, and approved of. This is called sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In terms of our ibadat, in terms of our worship, sunnah is of two types. One is called mu'akkad sunnah, and the other one is called ghayr mu'akkad sunnah. Mu'akkad means very regular, absolutely confirmed sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That if we are his ummah, we must follow the footsteps of our Nabi and must perform this particular sunnah of our Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is not fard, it is not compulsory. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not question you on the day of judgment if you miss the sunnah. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, he who does not practice my sunnah is not one of me. Dangerous. You will receive slack from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the day of judgment. The second type of sunnah in terms of ibadah is sunnah ghayr muakkada. Meaning, sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did this and sometimes he left it out. The sunnahs, for example, sunnah of Fajr Salat is muakkad sunnah. You cannot leave out the sunnah of Fajr prayer. The sunnah of both dhuhr at the front, at the back, at the end of before fard and after fard is also sunnah muakkada. You must not leave out this sunnah. Not allowed to. The sunnah of Maghrib Salat and the last 2 rakat sunnah of after Isha Salat, they're all muakkad form of sunnahs that you must perform. So when somebody says it's a muakkad sunnah, when they say sunnah, what kind of sunnah is it? Muakkad sunnah, it is a confirmed sunnah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always did it as a practice. What is the next category? Mustahab. Mustahab means preferred, liked. Refer to the acts of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which are all voluntary. He, for example, he says, he who fasts on Mondays and Thursdays voluntarily, tatawwu'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him such and such hasanat. And if you do this mustahab act, you get hasanat, reward for it. If you do not do it, you don't get anything. Absolutely nothing. There are many acts, voluntary acts, fall into this category of mustahab, liked, preferred, something that is encouraged, if you are able to do so. So these are in the positive categories, commandments, so to speak. In the negative category, we have the opposite of fard, opposite of obligation to do. What is it? Haram. Haram is an act prohibited by Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the Holy Quran and the mutawatir hadith. For example, adultery, shirk, disobedience to one's parents, lying, cheating, usury, bribery, oppression, injustice, terrorism, to give up hope from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not fasting during the month of Ramadan, backbiting, slandering, wasting, using illicit drugs, stealing, wearing pure silk and gold for men, etc. They're all forms of haram. And every Muslim knows what the harams are. They are actually limited. They are not, unlimited number of harams. They are good for a purpose. There is hikmah, wisdom behind every prohibition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can study one by one and write books on these. For every prohibition, every haram that Islam says it is haram, there is always a benefit to the individual, to the society, to the family. Always great wisdom. Haram everybody knows. Makruh, not many people know. Makruh is the opposite of mustahab. This is an act which is absolutely disliked. detested, abhorred. Technically, the opposite of sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, opposite of mustahab, disliked acts are divided into two categories. One is mundane makruh acts, which is disliked. We just call them makruh, tanzihi, close to halal. In other words, you just leave the border line of halal. You are in the area where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never practiced. We call them makruh. But there are some makruh which are very close to haram. We call this makruh tahrimi, very close to haram, absolutely dangerous. You are playing with fire, you're going to get hurt. Very dangerous. For example, for no reason whatsoever, you're feeling lazy, you're watching telly, or you are on the internet, or playing with your idiot box, the Xbox, whatever it's called. Then Salatul Asr is passing. You know it's passing. It's going very fast. You're supposed to pray on time. You just leave your salat deliberately to the last minute, last 10 seconds of it. Last 2 minutes of when the sun is about to go down. This is makruh tahrimi to do so. Or you're busting to go to the toilet. Your wudu is very old and you are really suffering from the stomach cramps and you're holding yourself, you're dancing. And he says, I'm too lazy to make wudu. Allahu Akbar. You do your salat. But in salat, you're holding everything. What kind of salat is this? This is makruh tahrimi, close to haram. You're supposed to take proper wudu and Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. You're supposed to make proper wudu and with a tranquil heart, peaceful mind and rested body, you're supposed to stand before Allah and do your salat. Mubah. Mubah is an act which is permissible. Everything in Islam actually is permissible. Everything in life is permissible until otherwise told so. كل شيء إباحة. Everything is mubah unless there is a Sharia law which says it is not so. Everything is halal. Every action is halal unless there is an injunction in the Sharia, in the sacred law, which says it is haram, it is makruh tahrimi, it is, it's best to keep away from such and such. The basis of our law is kulli shay, everything is mubah. These are neutral acts, such as this acts which does not earn you any reward, or if you were to omit them, it does not earn you any, warrant any punishment. Simple, neutral acts. At the moment I'm scratching my head. What is it? Fard, wajib, sunnah, haram, makruh. What is it? Mustahab? No, it's just a mubah. I'm scratching my head. Or I want to wear a white dress. Sunnah, yes, of course. I want to wear a grey dress. I want to wear an attire that is suitable for my character and my liking, a designer label clothing which is permissible in Islam. It's mubah to do so. It's halal. It's not haram. Mubah means permissible. You can do it without any concern whatsoever. Standing, eating, blinking, rubbing your nose, etc. They're all mubah acts. Mufsid act refers to the type of act which spoils an already commenced act of worship. For example, if you were doing your salat in the masjid or at home in your room, one of your siblings or one of your brothers cracked a joke in the next room, you couldn't help yourself but start giggling, start laughing. When you laughed, what happens? That act of laughing is called mufsid act, which broke your what? Your salat. If you laughed audibly in front of others, that people have heard you audibly, then both your salat as well as your wudu is broken. You need to go and renew your wudu as well as your salat. But if you just smiled a little bit without making much of a sound, nothing happens. But if you were to laugh yourself when you're praying, for some reason, you remember the joke or something, then if you laugh, your salat breaks. Nothing happens to your wudu. Your salat breaks. Assalamu alaikum, Allahu Akbar, start again. The only person who laughs at his own joke is a person who's lost his mind. He's going mad. You know what's the first sign of madness? Laughing at your own jokes. You know what the second sign of madness? I'm just joking, by the way. Looking for hairs in your palm. You know when the actual trouble starts? When you actually find them. So you're over the board. So these ranking of our acts is very important for us to comprehend, really understand. If you have any questions, I can answer now. If not, you take these notes with you. And it is also on the internet. Those people who just joined us, under the link, the picture that you're watching at the moment, there is a link for this particular PDF file, and you can download it, and inshallah you can print it and memorize it. Now let's go to, inshallah ta'ala, our normal lecture for the day. We are going through the fard number 7, which is to consume only halal foods. We covered so far many things. Now we're looking at the animals that we allowed to eat. Animals that bleed, blood flows when you slaughter them or when they die, when you cut them into pieces. Islamically speaking, the Sharia, our fiqh, divides the animals that can be eaten or not eaten into 2 categories: domestic and wild animals. Domestic animals are in themselves divided into 2 categories. Those with molars, and those without molars. And the wild animals are also divided into 2, those without molars and those with molars. I will inshallah ta'ala explain, because this is just a broad category and it will make sense to you. Some of these things that may not be absolutely relevant to you right now, but you are a 21st century Muslim. But Islam is applicable to all times and ages and all centuries and all regions in the world. Majority of the people who live, they live in the rural areas, not in the first world the urban lives or in the cities, modern cities. Many people live in the kampongs, villages, in the dai'ah. They live in the rural areas, villages. And they need to know these ahkam in order to practice their deen. So, amongst those domestic animals, those without molars are of 3 kinds according to Sharia. What do you mean 3 kinds? Simply halal and mubah to eat, haram to eat, makruh, tahrimi to eat. Look, our list has become very useful to us. It's here. I use 3 terms, 4 terms. Halal and mubah to eat, haram to eat, makruh, tahrimi to eat, consume. Simple. So I didn't have to explain to you individually. Halal means what Allah and His Rasul says in the book, and the mutawatir hadith is in the, it's permissible to eat. No, I didn't have to explain. You can look at your terminology list, glossary of terms here, and you can just follow, inshallah ta'ala. Halal things, domestically permissible to eat, such as camels, cattle, beef. We're talking about cows and bulls, and bullocks, veal, sheep, male and female, ram and ewes, goats, ox. Probably some of you never seen one. This is the life in Australia. These are halal. to eat provided that they are slaughtered properly. I will explain this to you later on. Slaughtered properly. And under certain circumstances also, that they must fulfill certain criteria. I will come back to this inshallah ta'ala. There are certain types of domestic animals which are absolutely impermissible, forbidden to eat, haram to eat. For example, you can slaughter your donkey and eat it. Domestic donkey. Or the mule, if the mother was the donkey. Mule is an animal, when they crossbreed a donkey and a horse, and the product is mule. You can't eat mule. It's haram to eat so if the mule is from who? From a donkey. Had a mother, had a donkey as a mother. And the third category is makruh tahrimi. Makruh tahrimi means close to haram, detestable, very close to haram to eat, but not haram. Horse. Brother, I never knew that we can eat horses. Under certain circumstances, at war, Islam put some conditions. The Uzbek Muslims in Russia, they eat horses. And the mule from the horse. If the mother is a horse, not a donkey, then it is makruh tahrimi to consume such animals. Those with molars, we looked at without the ones without molars. The ones with molars, dogs, cats, domestic leopards used for hunting or pets, they are absolutely haram to consume. Whether you are Vietnamese or Chinese, it doesn't matter. It's haram, haram, haram. You cannot. Wild animals. We looked at domestic animals, the wild animals. Again with the same category, those without molars. Amongst them, it is absolutely halal and mubah, permissible to eat, are deer, bucks, bambi, wild cattle and camels, rabbit and zebra. It's called the wild donkey from Arabic. It is permissible to eat if you catch one, that is. And if you're living in Africa, that is. And it must be slaughtered according to Islam amongst the wild animals. And you can't have a zebra as a pet unless something else happens. It's getting interesting. Amongst those wild animals again, those with molars, it is absolutely haram and impermissible to eat, obviously, pig, boars, elephants, lions, tigers, wolves, hyenas, bears, monkeys, jackals, foxes, and all forms of other predatory wild cats. Not allowed to. Haram to consume them. So far so good? Very good. How about the bird kingdom? What happens amongst the birds? There are also two types of birds. Domestic ones and the wild birds. The domestic ones are absolutely halal and mubah and permissible to eat, are all poultry, fowls, chickens, turkeys, ducks and geese. These are all allowed to, permissible to eat. We are referring to even pigeons. If you were to raise pigeons in your own backyard for consumption, or quails for that matter, it's all permissible to eat. The wild birds, game birds we call them, who live in the wild, Islam categorizes them into two categories. one with claws and the ones without claws. The wild birds, those without claws, which are halal and mubah to consume, permissible to eat, are pigeons, sparrows, quails, partridges, cranes, nightingales, hudhud, whoopie bird, and all forms of ducks and geese, all game birds that eat seeds. Some of those birds you've never heard of, but these are quite common in the rural areas. You never heard of what a partridge is. You never heard of what a crane is. Nightingales, the singing bird, the little one, beautiful. Whoopie, never heard of hoopies. You heard of hippies, but not hoopies. The bird that Quran mentions, the one that brought news to Sulaiman alayhi salam, hudhud. It is halal to consume so. Those with claws, it is absolutely haram and impermissible to eat all forms of raptors, birds of prey who eat jifa, who eat other animals, carrions, rotten animals. They rip it apart and eat it. Falcons, eagles, hawks, kites, vultures, crows, stork, night owls, and bats. And bats. Having said all of these things, there are some very important points we must keep in mind if we're ever going to live on a farm, a rural area, or we're going to keep some animals, domestic animals, as pets in our backyard. Firstly, if for any reason a camel or a cattle, beef, cow or bull, sheep, goat, chickens, only eat their own droppings, feces, or the droppings of other animals, they're gone mad. Then Sharia says, if you were to slaughter them, or if you were to milk them, it is even if you said Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim upon them when you did this, it is haram to eat so. Because their food is najis, impure. Therefore, it affects everything within them. For the above animals to become halal again, Islam doesn't just chuck them away. Islam says there is a solution. And that solution is they must be kept in an enclosed area, an enclosure, and their feed is controlled. Halal, permissible feed is given to them, and depending on the animal, after a certain period, they all become halal again. For example, Islamic law says, in order for a camel to become clean from the jifa that he eats, the lasha that he eats, the filth that he eats, it must be put into captivity and controlled environment for 40 days. After 40 days, you can begin to use milk the camel, and if you were to slaughter, you can eat the meat. A cattle, bull, cow, bullock, for 20 days. So if you want to make qurban, the biha, for Eid al-Adha, our elders suggest to us, if you know the person that you buy this cattle from, it's well and good, you can buy the day before, even on the same day. But if you do not know, it is better to bring the camel or the cow, that animal that you want to slaughter, into your backyard and go through this process of cleansing. So that the sacrificial animal that you're going to make in udhiyah, in the dhabiha that you're going to make, the qurban that you make, sacrifice that you're going to make, becomes pure and halal to do so. For a sheep or a goat, 10 days. There is a question. Yes?
Is that the same when animal rights groups feed pig to cattle that are heading to the Middle East, the livestock?
I suppose, yes. The question is, there are some animal rights organizations. They have, in order to stop the live export of Australian beef to overseas, because it's such a cruelty on the ship when they travel, they feed the fodder, the food of the cattle, tainted with a pig's blood, and the animals eat, najis, so to speak, without knowing. It says, what happens to those animals? Same thing happens. The Muslims, when they receive these animals, on the other hand, they need to go through this process of 20 days of pure feeding, and that animal becomes clean. For a sheep or goat is 10 days. For any type of poultry or fowls, chickens and geese and ducks, you name it, that you have in your farm, 3 days. For little birds such as sparrows and quails and pigeons, the little ones, it's 1 day. After 1 day, their digestive system is so quick, everything comes out anyway. Everything comes out. Watch out when the pigeons are around. That's how good they are. So this is an area that we must keep in mind. Otherwise, it is haram to consume the meat or drink their milk. If, for example, there is a doubt that the animals eats both, in other words, eats a good feed as well as the najis feed, then what happens in that case? If the opinion that is dominant in your heart that this animal eats properly, but every now and then he helps himself with an old habit of eating some jifa, then in that case, his the meat as well as the milk is still permissible to consume so. When is our salat? Is it 10 past? The even shorter. 5 to 9. 7 to 9. Our time is 8:54. How long to go?
About 20 minutes.
What time is the Isha again?
12 past.
You sure? Is it 12 past? Okay. I will continue, inshallah. I will stop at 9 o'clock, so it gives people some time to ask questions before that. Or I can continue with my material. That if you have any questions, you can ask so. I am going to go through later on, inshallah, revisit this. What is halal and what is haram? When does it become halal? We call zakah. Zakah is actually to purify an animal. How does an animal become pure in order for us to consume? In other words, is dhabiha. Under what circumstances there are involuntary dhabiha, and there must be an ikhtiyari, voluntary, the deliberate dhabiha. It must be done. Inshallah, we will look at, once we're looking at those things, I'll bring in the question of the slaughtering of Ahl Kitab and what is permissible and what is not permissible in a greater detail and greater discussion, inshallah ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the edible animals in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sharia in particular, you would find that these are all part of the tayyibat, pure. And the animals which are prohibited in Islam, birds, the domestic or non-domestic, the wild ones, they are prohibited because they are referred to as khabithat, impure ones. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers in the Quran, Surah Al-A'raf, in verse 156, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمْ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, O Nabi, enjoin upon them what is ma'roof, what is sound-minded people, what the Sharia dictates, obliges you to do, commands you to do, something that makes sense. And also prohibit them from doing munkar, that is evil, that is shar, that is harmful, what the sound-minded people and the Sharia says, which is harmful to a person. Also, command them to consume only tayyibat, pure and halal ones, and ask them to shun, keep away from khabithat. Khaba'ith is the plural of the word khabith, the khaba'ith, the impure word, impure animals. If you were to study and really analyze why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited an elephant to eat, or a lion to eat, or a donkey to eat, or snake to eat, you would find that they are by nature, either by nature or because of the things they do, they're classified as khabithat. And if you look at the animals that we eat, consume, that you would find that they are tayyib, they are beneficial, nutritious to us. They feed on seeds, they feed on the grass and the vegetation, which is beneficial for them as well as beneficial to us. This is the nature of khabithat as well as tayyibat. Inshallah, next week I will begin to explain this in a more detailed manner, so that inshallah we continue to learn our beautiful deen, our way of life, that we learn the fara'id, we learn the compulsory things in Islam, so that we do not make mistakes when we are confronted with such options, such choices, that we are well informed and we become practicing conscientious Muslims, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our beneficial knowledge. There is a question from the sister's side. Let's see. Okay, this question is not relevant to our talk tonight. It is to do with tomorrow morning's class, and I shall inshallah answer this question in tomorrow morning's class. Somebody is asking whether they should attend a camp or not, to do with madrasa, nothing to do with our Friday night class, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair jaza, wa akhiru da'wana, and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Any other questions? There is a question here. Yes. One. A kangaroo, is it permissible to eat? Definitely yes, to do so. The animals which cud, the animals that cud, you know what cudding is? That when they consume their food first, after a while they bring it up again, they start chewing again, like the cows. Okay? And there are certain claws. In Sharia, this is more defined in a more certain manner. Not like the beasts of burden, like a donkey or the, what do you call, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, a horse, but they have claws, but these claws are not for what they call killing another animal to eat it. They only feed on grass. They're like sheep, they're like the camels and the cows. And I've never heard any alim, any scholar of any kind saying that kangaroo meat is not halal. As long as it is slaughtered properly, in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hunted properly, and with permission, of course, with you do all the right things by law, then it is permissible to consume kangaroo meat. I have consumed kangaroo meat, and there is nothing wrong with it. Koala meat, on the other hand, keep away.
My second question, normally wild animal is very hard to catch. Is it when the hunter says Bismillah and shoot the animal, is it permissible for us?
We will look at the hunting rules, inshallah ta'ala, when it comes. When you are hunting, How do you catch an animal? How do you catch a wild beast, a deer for example, a venison? Okay, you've got a gun in your hand, a shotgun. It's not a computer game, it's not that easy, but it's a living thing. So when you shoot, what do you do? By the time you get to the animal, it's dead. If when you get to the animal, it's still breathing, regardless of how you shot it, you need to make the biha, Bismillah Allahu Akbar. If you cannot, by the time you reach the animal is dead, then what do you do? When you're shooting, actually, ulama say, put the bullets that you're going to use for hunting, for halal consumption, put the bullets, while they're putting the bullets, you say, Bismillah Allahu Akbar, Bismillah Allahu Akbar, Bismillah Allahu Akbar. Load it up with Bismillah Allahu Akbar. And when you're shooting, in that excitement, you forget. So that they're all Bismillahs, Allahu Akbar. Good. Okay. When you shoot the animal, no problem. Go and find it, and if the animal is dead, dead. If not, we will inshallah look at the forms of slaughtering, even in Australia. So-called halal meat slaughtering establishments and abattoirs. From mushroom guns to shooting the animal dead and other electric shocks and what have you. Inshallah, we will try to look at them in more detail, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair jazam. We have only a few minutes left for our salat. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah into our learning. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah into our lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our beneficial knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our a'mal al-salihah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our ikhlas and sincerity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our fiqh and understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our yaqeen, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us good Muslims, sincere Muslims, conscientious Muslims, learned Muslims who are serious about that. They say Islam, who become practicing Muslims, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your evening. Jazakumullah khair jaza for joining us this evening, and all of our brothers and sisters and the families for watching over the internet. ymatv.com.au, inshallah, is on the testing the phase at the moment. Inshallah, very shortly it will be, inshallah, will be fully fledged website where you can download many of the previous talks. There are over 300-400 talks, inshallah, according to topics. Then you can benefit from them. We can watch them in a high quality on your own computer, in your own family, at your own leisure, inshallah ta'ala. ymatv.com, not au. ymatv.com, no au. Okay, just inshallah. If you cannot make it for some reason to the class, you can always get your sisters and brothers and families. I know quite a few families in various parts of Australia are watching. From Wagga Wagga to Adelaide to Sydney to Dubbo to Brisbane and many parts. They get groups of 30, 40, 50 youth, and they have big screens similar to ours, and they watch these the talks from there. Because the people do not appreciate the value that they have in their hands. Na'udhu billah, I'm not referring to myself. The Islamic education classes is a luxury to us. But it is absolutely something they miss so much. They don't have any access to any Islamic learning. So through this means, using the technology in the service of Islam, inshallah, we, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to reach those brothers and sisters where they can continue with their basic Islamic education, which is compulsory upon every Muslim to achieve and receive so. Jazakumullahu khair al-jaza. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, wahdaka la sharika lak, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim, wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Sadaqa Allahu al-azim. Lillahi ta'ala al-Fatiha.